actually, if you would just tell us a little bit about what brings you to the Busan Film Festival and how you've been enjoying our stay here.
Oh, I came here pretty impulsively, actually. I was going to Macau for an award ceremony, and I was getting ready to go to another festival, and a friend of mine, Jenna Ju, who's here, who was my casting director on Bastards and his casting director on Snowpiercer, said she's going to the Busan Festival and she's going to hang out with Bong. And I've never met him and always wanted to, so I said, can I come? She said, yeah, and here I am. And we've never met each other before. We hung out for the last 2 days and had a great time.
네, 먼저 지금 이 시대를 살아가는 데 있어서 가장 이야기를 잘 풀어내는 두
Meet director Bong. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you first became aware of his work and what impressed you about it, and then director Bong maybe say the same thing about Mr. Tarantino's work.
늘 봉준호 감독님께서 만나고 싶었다고 하셨는데요. 어떻게 하다가 봉준호 감독님의 영화를 처음 알게 됐는지 알려주십시오.
Well, when the first film of Bong's I saw was in America was The Host, when it got released in the theaters, and I had heard it was a really good film, and I saw it, and I was blown away. I thought it was really terrific, and I felt that almost of all the filmmakers out there that I've seen in the last 20 years, Bong has that thing that 70s Spielberg had, where he can do many different types of stories, but no matter the type of story, there's always this level of comedy and entertainment that is there. Like, you know, when you think about Jaws, everyone thinks about the big scare scenes or the big suspense scenes, but there's all these little wonderful comic moments, human moments all the way through it. And I see that all throughout Bong's work. And then that got me to see Memories of Murder, which I just think is a masterpiece. And I like them actually both equally. I think they're both equally great in their own way, and made me a big fan.
사실 제가 처음 이 봉준호 감독님의 영화를
Shows older films, all 35mm. It's called The New Beverly, and we had a Bong double feature. We showed Memories of Murder in 35mm and Mother in 35mm. And it was a great double feature, and I'd only seen it on DVD, so to actually see it in a movie theater just was even better.
사실 이 LA의 리바이벌 하우스라고 해서
네, 펄픽션 한국에 개봉을 해서 한국에서 되게 빨리 개봉을 한 상황이었다고 하더라고요. 아까 며칠 전에 얘기 들었는데 그걸 보고 되게 충격을 받았죠. 아니 뭐 이런 영화가 아무도 생각지 못했던 개념, 그러니까 내러티브의 진행 방식이라든가 모든 것이 너무나 충격적이었기 때문에 저뿐 아니라 사실 많은 제 같이 학교 다니던 학생들이나 다들 충격을 받았던 거죠.
I think it was Perfect Fiction. I was released in 1997 in Korea, and I was in the college at the time. And I heard later that Perfect Fiction was quite released earlier than other countries. And when I watched the film, I was so shocked. And I think it was a kind of a narrative style that nobody thought of at that time. And I think it was not just me, and I think all of my friends at the college felt the same way.
그리고 그 펄픽션 때문에 이제 그 저수지의 개들을 찾아보게 됐죠. 그 비디오로 봤는데 그것 또한 되게 충격적이었고 그 귀를 자르는 장면 정말 아름다운 장면인 것 같습니다.
And after the perfection, of course, I watched the Reservoir Dogs. I searched it and I watched it on the video, and it was also a very shocking moment experience. And especially the scene, the cutting the ear, I think it was beautiful.
그 마지막에 그 피범벅이 된 하비 카이틀이 팀 로스였나? 껴안고 웃는 그 마지막은 되게 압도적이었어요. 무슨 그리스 비극을 보는 듯한 그런 장중한 느낌으로 다가왔어요.
The last scene where the Harvey Keitel hugging the Tim Roth in full blood bath, and I think that scene was actually reminding me of kind of the Greek tragedy.
그 다음부터는 뭐 켄틴이 이제 새로운 신작 발표할 때마다 저뿐 아니라 뭐 전 세계 모든 영화 팬들 그렇겠지만 뭐 어느 작품이 더 좋고 어느 게 더 덜 좋고 뭐 이런 차원은 아니었던 것 같고 영화를 한 편 3, 4년마다 발표할 때마다 그 자체가 되게 큰 어떤 영화적인 이벤트였던 것 같아요.
I think after that, I think I just, not just me, all of the movie fans and all of the viewers, I believe they are waiting for Quentin's next film. I think it is not a matter of liking this one better or less. I think every 3 or 4 years he made a film, and I think everyone just waited and loved the film.
I'm curious to talk a little bit about genre films because we both gravitate towards working in genre, but using it to get at larger things. You've made Quentin revenge western about slavery, a Men on a Mission movie about the Holocaust. Director Bong has made a monster movie about environmental issues and American pollution of the Han River, and now a post-apocalyptic dystopian film very much about class warfare. And there's obviously a rich history of genre films talking about really important themes, but buried under the surface of conventions. So talk a little bit about what draws both of you to making this kind of cinema.
사실 두분 다 모두 이 장르 필름에 장르 영화에 굉장히 관심이 많으신 걸로 알고 있습니다. 사실 이 장르 영화 퀸틴 타란티노 감독님 같은 경우에는 어떤 복수의 서사를 가지고서 그 노예 제도를 갖다 다루고 있는 어떤 이러한 영화를 서구 영화를 방식에서 만드셨고, 그 다음에 또 홀로코스트라고 하는 어떤 전체적인 주제를 또 그 영화에 적용시키기도 했습니다. 그와 마찬가지로 봉준호 감독님도 어떤 괴물의 형상을 가지고서 환경의 문제, 정치적인 문제를 갖다 이야기를 하셨고, 그래서 설국열차에서도 이러한 환경과 더불어 어떤 계급에 관한 문제, 이런 사회적 문제를 다루고 있습니다. 그렇기 때문에 굉장히 중요한 사회적 문제를 다룸에도 불구하고 어떤 장르적인 어떤 그 컨벤션 안에서 지금 영화를 만들고 있는데 그분에 대해 그 점에 대해서 좀 이야기를 해주시죠.
Yeah, well, for me, those are just the kind of movies I like. All right, those are the kind of, I watch all kinds of movies, but those are the movies that I gravitate towards. And those are usually the films by my favorite directors, and those are the ones that I collect and get kind of obsessive over. But when I throw my hat in the ring in either a Kill Bill, martial arts movie, or which I had never done before, or a war movie which I'd never done before, or a western which I'd never done before. My idea is to do them my way. I'm hoping to reinvent the genre a little bit. Not do them the normal way, just do it my way. And hopefully that's, I do it, I make my own little Quentin versions of them. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just make my Quentin version of what I've already liked.
Well, mention some of the directors that were particularly important to you who made genre films in their eras.
Yes, thank you. 사실 제가 그 장르 영화를
It's studying for my professorship in cinema, and the day I die is the day I graduate. It's a lifelong study. And so when it comes to, like, say, something like spaghetti westerns, I love Sergio Leone, I love Sergio Corbucci, or Duccio Tessari, people like that. And I love those films, and I'm a student of them, and I appreciate them, and they're all in my head as far as cinema vocabulary is concerned. But those are all still movies that are a product of their time. All right, when Corbucci or Leone does his movies, they are 67, they are 68, 69. I'm trying to do the 2013 perspective of them, both my perspective and the perspective of the audience now, who maybe has never seen those before, that they can relate to.
사실 저는 actually, of course, I liked the American genre films, and we talked about last night, and I actually liked the 70s, the genre films in America.
근데 그 장르의 어떤 전형적인 컨벤션들을 그대로 가지고 오면은 그게 이상하게 한국에 풀어놓으면 그게 적용이 안 돼요. 그러니까 뉴욕에서는 멋있게 걷던 형사들 한국 논두렁에서 걸면 이렇게 굴러 떨어지는 거죠.
I take the genre convention. If I use the genre convention of the kind of American genre, when I just brought it into Korean film, it is not really adapting it very well. It means the pop can be very cool in New York Street, but it is not working when the Korean pop is working at a very the farm alley or the farm field.
그래서 그 미국의 장르 컨벤션이 어떻게 한국에 왔을 때 그 컨벤션이 어떻게 망가지는가, 어떻게 거기에 그 지긋한 탕물이 튀는가, 그런 거에 더 쾌감을 느꼈던 것 같아요.
I think I was actually finding more pleasure that taking American convention into Korean films and how those groups kind of corrupted in Korean way and how they are muddied in a little bit very Korean way.
그래서 보통 미국 괴물 영화는 이제 뭐 과학자라든가 군인, 근육질 히어로 이런 사람들이 이제 몬스터랑 괴물이랑 맞서 싸우는데, 제 괴물 영화에서는 이렇게 좀 되게 맛이 간 가족들이, 바보 같은 가족들이 되게 힘겹게 싸우는 건데, 거기서 어떻게 한국적인 드라마가 나오게 되지 않나, 거기서 어떻게 보면 이상한 느낌의 새로운 작품이 나오는 게 아닌가 그런 생각이 좀 있었어요.
If in American monster films, there is always the scientist and the soldiers or the muscly hero who fights against this monster. But in my monster film, there is a very weird family who is fighting against this monster, and they are doing it in a very miserable way. But I think in the way I think we can create, I can create some kind of Korean drama in it, and also creating a very weird the feeling around it.
네, 설국열차에서는 이제 처음으로 그런 게 없었기 때문에 사이파이 장르, SF 장르에 한번 전면 배경을 해보자. 그래서 더 직설적으로 밀어붙였던 영화인데, 역시 그런 장르 자체의 쾌감을 폭발시키는 그런 영화는 이분이 훨씬 잘 찍지 않나 그런 생각이 들어요.
In Snowpiercer, actually there is no kind of a comparison point in Korea. So actually, since this is kind of sci-fi, the genre, I try to do it in a very straight and direct way. But I believe and the pleasure of a genre film, how handle that pleasure is the Tarantino is the much better one who handles it.
It's funny because that's the whole idea that a family, and not just any family, but a really weird, fucked up, strange family, like the family in The Host, would be the stars of the film. It's almost unfathomable in America that would, or in pretty much any other country, that would be how they dealt with it. And that's one of the things where you're reinventing the genre. That's giving it a whole new face.
제가 생각하기에는 바로 그런 가족이었기 때문에 정말 이상하고 완전 망가진 이런 그 가족들이 괴물.
되게 이상해요. 정말 이상한 사람들이 정상이 아니에요.
But I must say that the people in your film, the characters in your film are also the fucked up strange.
True that. I'm actually kind of curious though. When we were at dinner the other night, you were mentioning, as if anybody didn't know, that you were a fan of serial killer movies. And so you think of some of the great serial killer movies like William Friedkin's Cruising or Michael Mann's Manhunter. When you were doing Memories of Murder, were you thinking about how your film would fit inside of this serial killer genre?
지난주에 우리가 얘기를 하면서 사실 그 공감독님의 그 맨헌터라고 하는 그 한니발 렉터를 다룬 영화, 이 두 영화를 그러니까 영화 같이 이러한 영화들 그 리스트에 당신이 만든 살인의 추억이 끼어들 수 있는 역할을 하고 있는지 질문하셨습니다.
그 살인의 추억 준비하면서 그 연쇄살인범들에 대한 공부를 많이 했고, 해외 연쇄살인범들도 많이 했어요. 미국에도 그런 과정에서 또 아까 말한 마이클 만이나 또 조나단 된 양들의 친구라든가 그런 영화들도 많이 봤지만, 가장 크게 영감을 많이 받았던 거는 그
이만무라 쇼헤이의 그 Vengeance is Mine, 복수는 나의
거기에 또 영감 많이 받았습니다. 그래서 이 영화는 과연 그런 영화들 중에 어떻게 위치를 잡게 될 것인가에 대한 생각은 별로 없었고, 그런 영화들에서 영감을 받기는 했지만 사실 실제 사건 자체를 상대하기가 너무 버거운 거였어서 사건 자체를 어떻게든 정면 대결하려고 했었었고, 베이비 핀처의 그 조디액트였는데, 그 영화는 그 영화는 살인의 첩보다 몇 년 뒤에 나오니까 그건 그 양반한테, 베이비 핀처한테 물어보면 될 것 같습니다.
When I was making the memories of murder, actually I studied about the serial the killers, including all those American ones as well. And of course, I was concerning about the Manhunter by Michael Mann and also the Silence of the Lambs by Jonathan Demme. But mostly, I think I was mostly more concerning or influenced, inspired by Imam Rambay's Vengeance is Mine. And but even though I was inspired from all those films, but the real case of that film was itself, it was so heavy, and I had to deal with that fact first. And I think another the serial killer film can be the Zodiac by David Fincher, and but that film was released years after my film, so we should ask him what he think about that.
그리고 그 퀸틴하고 저하고 동시에 또 가장 좋아하는 연쇄살인 영화가 그 그로자와 기요시 감독님 큐어인데, 기요시 감독님 부산에 와 계셔서 며칠 전에 같이 만났었어요.
Actually, both of us liked the serial killer film, the Cure, directed by Kurosawa Kiyoshi. Actually, director Kiyoshi, the Kurosawa Kiyoshi was here in Busan, and we met and had time.
That was a good time. Good time.
매우 즐거운 시간이었어요.
I'm curious for each of you if there are genres you haven't worked in that you would like to eventually, that would you like to make a monster movie or a serial killer movie, and would director Bond like to make a western or a war picture?
지금 사실 이 장르 영화를 말씀하셨는데 지금 아직
The planet Earth couldn't handle my serial killer movie.
이 지구가 제가 만드는 연쇄살인범 영화를 감당할 수가 없습니다.
I would reveal my sickness far too much.
제가 생각엔 저의 그 어떤 그 깊숙이 있는 어떤 뒤풀린 질병을 너무 드러낼 것 같은 두려움이 있습니다.
That's pretty tough to mention.
Yes, I did. Yeah, so that is my serial killer movie. Yes.
왼쪽에 보는 킬러라고 하는 올리버스톤 감독의 영화에 각본을 쓰셨는데
Hate that fucking movie.
하지만 나는 그 영화 정말로 싫어합니다.
If you like my stuff, don't watch Natural Born Killers. It fucking sucks.
만약에 제 영화 좋아하신다면 그 영화는 보지 마세요. 완전 꽝입니다.
저는 이분이 저기 인글로리어스 바스타드 2차 대전 영화 찍었지만, 저는 2차 대전 중에서는 그 포로 수용소 있죠? 2차 대전 포로 수용소 탈출하는 영화 꼭 해보고 싶어요. 어렸을 때 그 대탈출이라는 저스터지스 대탈출 같은 거 재밌게 봤거든요.
Actually, he made the film about the World War II, the past Inglorious Bastards. And but if I'm making the film about World War II, I would probably making something about the prisoner camp. Someone who tries to escape the prison, just like the Great Escape by the John Sturge.
그리고 무인도 영화도 한번 찍어보고 싶어요. 무인도 영화를 하나의 장르라고 할 수 있을지는 모르겠지만, 무인도 영화도 꼭 해보고 싶은 그런 평생 아무리 노력해도 절대 찍을 수 없는 장르인 뮤지컬인 것 같습니다. 노래가 시작되는 순간에 그 부끄러움을 도저히 참을 수 없어요. 말하다가 갑자기 노래하죠. 오늘 밤 그걸 도저히 참을 수가 없어요.
If I want to try the one genre, if it can be called a genre, it can be kind of No Man's Island kind of the film. And I really want to try what in that situation. But if there's one genre I cannot try, will be the musical. Because I cannot take that embarrassing moment so suddenly tons of singing.
I want to see Bong Joon-ho's Great Escape.
사실 저는 봉준호 감독이 만든 그 대탈주 같은 영화 꼭 보고 싶습니다.
The music.
뮤지컬 버전으로.
I'm wondering if each of you have any sense of, do you feel, I mean, obviously, you have 2 Academy Awards now for Pulp Fiction and Django, but if we think overall, the kinds of films that win prizes that are shown in festivals, there does still seem to be a certain bias against what we would call genre films and favoritism shows as more overtly artistic films. And do you have any thoughts about that? Do you feel that what the reasons are for this institutional bias?
I don't know if that's so true anymore. I mean, like in my case, I can't complain at all. I've done 3 of my genre films, got nominated for Best Picture, and I won 2 Oscars on them. So far so good. But also even at film festivals, they're filled, and I'm not putting these movies down at all, obviously. But you look at a catalog and there's a movie about the Bataan Death March, and you look at the catalog and then there's a movie about a little girl who's living on the Palestinian border, or an old couple living in Arabia or something like that. But then when you read that there's a Korean cop movie, a Korean cop movie shoot 'em up playing at the festival, those are the screens that are filled to capacity.
지금 상황에서 이건 더 이상 그 사실
I mean, you can make, there's all kinds of movies, and I actually like all kinds of movies. But one of the things why people go to genre movies is when they do work, when they're done well, they're exciting, or they're funny, or they're the things that a lot of people, since the time that they're kids, associate with going to the movies. Now, as you get older and you get more sophisticated, your taste can change and you can actually appreciate a wide variety of movies. But when we're drawn to genre movies, we're drawn to that excitement of those initial movie experiences.
전 사실 모든 중에
장르 영화나 상업 영화, 또는 아트하우스 영화 이렇게 구분해서 생각하는 거 좋아하지 않습니다. 그게 과연 가능한 일인가 생각합니다. 저도 그냥 저 자신을 가장 흥분시키는 어떤 스토리나 저 자신을 가장 흥분시키는 이미지에 미친 듯이 거기를 향해서 돌진하는 거죠. 이게 예술 영화가 될 것인가, 상업 장르 영화가 될 것인가 이런 식으로 나눠서 생각해 본 적은 없어요.
Actually, I don't like the idea of separating the genre film, the commercial film versus the kind of art films, because when I make a film, I'm kind of going for the image that excites me and the story that excites me. It is not, I'm thinking about it. I'm going to make a commercial film or the art films.
그래서 어느 쪽이건 오래 여운이 남는 영화를 만들고 싶어요. 볼 때는 영화적 흥분에 가득 차서 보더라도 극장을 나오고 나서 왠지 자꾸 생각이 나고 그 다음날 밥을 먹는데 자꾸 몇 가지가 더 머릿속에서 맴돌고 또 그렇게 시간을 더 오래 견뎌내가지고 10년 후에 다시 DVD로 제가 발매됐었고 20년 후에 재개봉될 수 있는 그런 영화가 나온다면 그런 건 감독들의 꿈 아닐까 싶어요.
I think I simply want to make a film that kind of stays in people's head after watching the film. After they are excited about why they're watching it, and it's like after you watch the film and next day while you are eating, suddenly some scenes and some parts of the film kind of rushed into their heads, and it's like 10 years later my film would be rediscovered, and 20 years later and it's kind of re-released in the theater, and I think that kind of things are kind of every director's dream.
So, at the same time, it's like, is Jackie Brown and Mother, are they genre films or are they character studies? I mean, Jackie Brown has, they're exchanging money, they're smuggling money. But it has trappings of a blaxploitation genre, but it's not a blaxploitation movie. It's a study of those characters, an in-depth study of those characters that actually genre films aren't built for it. And same thing with Mother. It has a slight investigative trapping going on, but it's the story of that woman.
사실 그 제가
Tonight, a little bit about the role that you've played over the years as a presenter of a great many films from Asia and America, and helped to introduce to the American market directors like Takeshi Kitano, Wong Kar-wai, and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about your own discovery of Asian cinema and some of the filmmakers who have been significant to you, and particularly any from Korea that you might care about?
사실 저기 지난번에 우리가 이야기를 하면서
Because growing up in the 70s as a little boy and either watching films on television or going to the theaters, the films made in other countries, other than England, that would get a lot of play in America, were Hong Kong and Taiwan martial art movies, Japanese monster movies and space movies, and Filipino drive-in films, and also the Italian cop movies and spaghetti westerns. So it was always like kind of the B movie genres that I was exposed to, but I loved them and became a real student of them. And in fact, it was magnificent yesterday. I was so excited because I'm going through the catalog of Busan, and I noticed that they were showing Shang She's The One-Armed Swordsman with Wang Yu. And Wang Yu's always been one of my favorite actors. In America, we call him Jimmy Wang Yu. And to actually go and Shang Chi's been a hero of mine, and so to actually go and see One-Armed Swordsman in 35 millimeter here at the festival for the first time was fantastic.
사실 제가 70년
One of my favorite, the Japanese giant monster movies are. One of my favorite directors is Insero Honda, who directed those films. To me, along with Steven Spielberg, he's the greatest science fiction director of all time. As he truly, in movie after movie after movie, created his own world, his own alternative universe, where apparently Japan lost the war but won the space race. And America's there, but they're kind of a junior partner. I think his stuff is fantastic.
사실 이
Korean director of the 70s, growing up, whose films I'd seen quite a bit, was a Korean martial arts director who worked for Golden Harvest a lot, named Hong Fang. And he, in particular, worked with Angela Mao Ying in movie after movie, Deep Thrust, Lady Kung Fu, Lady Whirlwind. But they all had Korean concerns. Almost every single one of his movies took place during Korea, the occupation of Korea by the Japanese, and usually always starring Korean fighters in the film. Usually, and Angela Mao is the one Chinese who's sitting there helping them out. But like there's a movie When Taekwondo Strikes is one of my favorite martial art films. But that's a situation of a Korean director in Hong Kong making Korean-oriented films for the Hong Kong film industry.
그리고 또 하나 그
Thing, in terms of his movies, seeing them as a young lad at the theaters, before the history books taught me the inhuman brutality that the Koreans suffered under the Japanese, before I learned it in school, I learned it in his movies.
사실 마지막으로 하나 더 덧붙이자면 제가 그
A question of Director Bong. I know we've spoken before of our mutual affection for a great Korean genre director, Lee Man-hee. Perhaps you have some other genre favorites from Korean and Asian cinema.
사실 저기 지난번에 우리가 이야기를 나눴을 때 한국 영화 감독들 중에서 혹시 영향을 받은 사람이 있는가 했는데 그때 그 이만희 감독의 어떤 장르 영화 영향을 많이 받았다라고 이야기를 하셨는데 혹시 좀 더 설명을 더 해주실 수 있는지요?
네, 이만희 감독님 영화는 물론 참 좋아하고요. 마의 계단이라는 돌아오지 않는 해변. 근데 이제 또 저의 멘토라고 할 수 있는 건 이제 김기영 감독님이죠. 그 오리지널 한여를 만드신 하우스메이드라는 영화 있는데 그게 이제 마틴 스콜세지가 복원해서 한국에서 상영도 했었고 김기영 감독님은 언제나 제가 가장 존경하는 감독님이고 반면에 이제 제가 어렸을 때 저도 70년대 어린 시절 보냈는데 7, 80년대 그때는 뭐 시네마테크도 없었고 또 DVD 같은 것도 없었기 때문에 저는 그 TV 텔레비전이 저한테 시네마테크 역할을 했었고요.
Of course, I like the director Lee Man-hee. His films kind of the evil, the stairs of evil, and the marionette who doesn't return. But I must just say, my hero in Korean film history it must be the director Kim Gi-young, the director who made the original Housemaid. And the Housemaid was restored by Martin Scorsese, and it was. And he is the director I most admire. And also I spent my childhood 70s and 80s, but at the time there was no Cinematheque and there was no DVDs, and so it turns out the television is the kind of my own Cinematheque.
제 나이 또래 되시는 분들은 잘 아실 텐데 AFKN이라고 있었어요. 방송 채널 중에 아메리칸 폴시스 코리안 네트워크라고 주한 미군 방송인데 그거를 금요일하고 토요일날 밤에 많이 봤어요. 식구들 다 잘 때 밤 12시쯤 기어 나와서 거기 채널을 틀면은 되게 야한 영화나 폭력적인 영화를 많이 해줘. 이 미국 B무비 같은 것들을 많이 해줬었거든요. 그 당시 한국 방송에서 나오는 것보다 그 폭력과 섹스의 묘사가 훨씬 생생하게 나왔기 때문에 어린 나이에 그걸 되게 많이 봤고요. 나중에 어른이 되고 나서 그때 봤던 영화가 도대체 뭐였나를 다시 되짚어보니까 결국 그게 난 존 카펜터 영화고 브라이언 드 팔마 영화고 해머 스튜디오 공프라고 이런 식이었죠. 어릴 때는 그게 뭔지 모르고 막 계속 본 거지. 그리고 또 영어 대사니까 못 알아듣잖아요. 그러니까 막 스토리를 내러티브를 막 멋대로 재구성하는 걸 보면서 그러면서 상상력도 키워지고.
When I was little, there was in television there is a channel called AFK, and it's American Forces Korean Network. This kind of military service the network at the time, and every Friday and Saturday there is the movie playing around the midnight. So I kind of sneaked out, and I watched those films, and while my families are sleeping, and those films are very sexual and also very violent, and most of them are kind of the American B-class film, the genre films. But I enjoyed the vividness of the sex and violence of those films. But as I grow up, I kind of what those films really was, and it turns out I found out later those films were made by John Carpenter, Brian De Palma, and sometimes the horror films from the Hammer Studio, and so. But at the time I didn't understand English at all, so I didn't understand the story either. So I kind of reconstruct the story in my head by myself. So in a way, this kind of helped my imagination.
Well, when I'm thinking of things that your films have in common, one thing that sort of came to mind immediately is that, like some of the great directors of the golden age of Hollywood, you both have a kind of stock company of actors that you like to work with over and over again. In Quentin's case, of course, Harvey Keitel, Uma Thurman, Christoph Waltz. In director Bong's case, Kim Roy-ha, Yim Hee-bong, and of course the great Song Kang-ho. Can you talk a little bit about that and whether you write these films with particular people in mind for the roles, even at the screenplay level?
사실 그 헐리우드 두 감독님이 아주
저랑 송강호 선배도 벌써 한 3작품을 했는데 10여 년 전이요. 자꾸 그 대화의 양이 줄어드는 것 같아요. 작품을 반복할수록 그냥 세수하고 밥 먹고 현장에 나와서 어느새 막 찍고 있어요. 좋은 의미에서 대화가 줄어든다는 그런 느낌을 받는 것 같아요.
Actually, they understand without actually talking to them. And like Mr. Song Kang-ho, and I worked with him in 3 films for the last 10 years. And I think our conversation is the quantity of our conversation is kind of less and less every time. We just in the morning he comes out washing his face and eat and go shooting, and so I think it is kind of in a good way the conversation kind of becomes less and less.
그리고 아까 그 변희봉 선생님을 언급을 하셨어요. 외국인이 발음하기 쉽지 않은 이름인데 변희봉 선생님을 또 충실하게 말해주셔서 고마웠는데 그 변희봉 선생님을 처음 프란달스의 계란에서 캐스팅하고 살인의 추억과 괴물에서도 이제 모시고 찍었던 데는 이제 퀸틴의 영향이 있었어요. 그러니까 그 무슨 얘기인가 하면은 퀸틴이 펄프 픽션에서 예를 들어 그 한동안 관객으로부터 조금 잊혀졌던 약간 멀어졌던 배우들을 다시금 화려한 스포트라이트를 받게 끌어내는 데 있어서 되게 천재적인 캐스팅 감각을 갖고 있거든요. 그 얘가 이제 존 트라볼타라든가 저키 브라운의 무슨 팸 그리어라든가. 근데 변희봉 선생님도 이제 한국에서 영화를 10몇 년간 안 하시고 TV에서 되게 조금씩 활동하시다가 제가 저분은 분명히 스크린에서 뭔가 폭발을 시킬 만한 뭔가가 있다라는 생각을 했었거든요. 그래서 다시 모셔오게 됩니다. 실제로 그래서 퀸틴이 하는 그런 그 캐스팅 방식
Hibong. It is very difficult name to pronounce for foreigners. And I worked with him, the Barking Dogs Never Bite, and also the mother of the memories of mother and the post. And I think the casting him in my films was kind of influenced by the Quentin's casting method, because I believe the Quentin has this the method that the casting the actor who is a little bit forgotten from the public and put them on the spotlight again. For example, like John Travolta and Ben Clear from the Jackie Brown, and actually the Byun Hee-bong was he was kind of out of work from the cinema for like 10 years, and when he was working at the television, and I knew that he had this power and the presence the show can be shown in the screen. So following the Quentin's casting methods, I hired him. I worked with him. Because he's the kind of actor you know already, yet not remember right now very much, and so that is kind of the method I took.
One of my thought processes as far as like casting, like the way Bong's talking about, is again growing up in the 70s, I'd go to see movies and see some exploitation monster movie or horror film, and some actor who used to be a big name has kind of worked his way down the ladder 20 years later, and now they're starring in a giant bear movie. And or Farley Granger shows up in a slasher movie. Ralph Meeker shows up in an alien movie. Now these are fantastic actors, and I would look at them, and they're fantastic in these movies. They're doing a really good job in these movies, and I was always thinking, well, what if you were to give them a good script? What if you were to give them a real role like the ones that they had before, that they could really sink their teeth into? And then when I went and saw Francis Ford Coppola's movie Tucker, that had Martin Landau in it, who was like doing the lowest of the low stuff at the time, and then all of a sudden he has that role, and you can see a certain light in his eyes that he's being an actor again. And I always thought that you could always get a whole lot of bang for your buck and feel good about it, and get something wonderful. That yes, Gene Hackman is a wonderful actor, but he's had his pick of roles for the last 30 years. Dustin Hoffman is a wonderful actor, but he's had his pick of roles. There's other actors as good as them who haven't been as lucky.
사실 되게
A little stock company. That always seemed to me to be the goal, because all my favorite directors just always have their own stock company. Sam Peckinpah, Aldrich, Siegel. They use the same actors again and again. But the thing is, yeah, it's always fun to work with people that you like and that you know and that you get to hang out with again. But at the same time, in some of those the actors have to be able to do my dialogue, and not every actor can do my dialogue. And those are the actors who's proven that they can do my dialogue.
사실 저도 좋아하고 one of the actor who can actually say your dialogue very well is Christopher Archino.
크리스토퍼 아치.
Okay. So, how did you discover him?
Oh gosh, he came in. I didn't know. I wasn't aware who he was. He was a German TV actor, but he'd been acting for 20 years. But really never. Early in his career, did a couple of things, but never really did any international productions. Mostly just German television. But when I wrote that character of Hans Landa, because I wasn't writing it for anybody in particular, the character really came alive on the page, and he revealed himself to me. And the most important thing that he revealed to me was that he was a linguistic genius, Landa. He could speak in any language that could come up and just speak it perfectly. And I knew unless I cast an actor who was a linguistic genius, the character on the screen would never be the character that was on the page. It couldn't be you had to go learn it. A person just had to have the same facility as Landa had. And so we were seeing some of the best actors in Germany were coming in, the big Kingsleys of Germany. But they weren't able to pull off my English dialogue as good as they could do the French and the German. They were fluent, but they couldn't turn it into the poetry that it needed to be. And I had thought at that time that Landa was not only the best character I had ever written, it was the best character I would ever write. And so I was very precious about him. And when I was starting to get desperate because I wasn't finding him. And I was going to cancel the movie. I was going to pull the plug. I had like a week longer to go, or I could still pull the plug and it'd only be my money spent. I could still get out of it. And I said, we have to find Landa this week or I'm canceling the movie. And because, World War II ain't going anywhere. I can do it 5 years from now. And then literally 2 days later, after I had made that decision that if we don't find him this week, it's done, Christoph Waltz waltzed in to our room. And the minute he started reading the opening scene in English, I knew we were going to make the movie. I knew I had found, he gave me, I was starting to say goodbye to my movie inside, and he gave me my movie back.
사실 제가 이제
Respective careers. Django is also the most successful commercially of your films. Snowpiercer is a huge success in Korea. Now it goes out into the rest of the world. You both started as scrappy independents and now are kind of at the front rank of large-scale movies that are enjoyed by audiences all around the world, and managed to do it without losing any of the personality we associate with those first films that we fell in love with. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about advancing into the world of studio filmmaking, of bigger budget filmmaking, without sacrificing everything that made those early films so distinctive. Because it seems to be not the easiest thing in the world to do when you look at the careers of a lot of directors.
사실 지금 타렌티노 감독이 is the English spoken on the film and also why the made in the American speaking English speaking the world, but yet it is not really the Hollywood film. It was kind of an international cooperation between with the participation of a Korean producer and also the investment of Korea. So in a way, I was protected under that moment, and I know the major studio in America has, the director has no final cut, and also even from the script writing and also the casting, the studio always had a kind of they can pressure the director and also interfere the production. And I know the 40 $40 million the budget is amazingly, the big budget in Korea and in Asia. Yet, yet I was quite allowed to have my creative independence, and I was not interfered. I was not pressured, and in that way, I consider myself very, very lucky.
In my case, I think it all boils down to the fact that I'm a writer-director, and I write my own scripts. And so far, every time I've written a script, people have wanted to do it. If I wasn't a writer and I was just stuck looking at material from this script versus that script out there, or trying to find a book and getting involved in developing it and everything, I think I might navigate it a little bit more successfully than some other people, but I could easily fall into some of the traps that they fall into. But it's easy to keep your voice when it's always your writing, and it's always about your script and always about your writing, and that's where it's always starting from.
제가 생각해 우리가 이제는 이 보통 여기서 맞춰야 될 것 같은데요. 시간이 벌써 다 돼버렸어요.
So I want to thank so much Quentin Tarantino and Bong Joon-ho for spending this hour or so up here talking about their wonderful work.
예, 이렇게 우리 퀸틴 타란티노 감독님과 홍정호 감독님께 이렇게 1시간 동안 이렇게 많은 이야기를, 좋은 이야기를 해주셔서 감사드립니다.
And I want to thank our wonderful translator.